Hi, I'm David Bullen. I'm a writer, director and academic based in the UK, and I'm delighted to have been asked by EastLine to introduce this amazing series that you're about to witness. Over the next month, hugely excitingly, EastLine are bringing you the epic poem, the Iliad. Now, I first got involved with EastLine last year on their production of the Greek tragedy Antigone. And when Antigone, which we think of as ancient, premiered in Athens in the middle of the 5th century BCE, the Iliad, popularly attributed to a guy called Homer, that poem was already several hundred years old and one of the most significant works in that culture. It has since become one of the most significant works of all time, a foundational text in Western literature, setting a thematic agenda that so much film, television, drama, literature and poetry has continued to follow. Now, we say the Iliad is by Homer, but it's hard to say really with any precision who actually composed that poem, or indeed when. It's associated with Homer, and it's usually dated to around the 8th century BCE. But it's likely that the poem was developed over successive generations as individuals told and retold stories that were at the heart of what we now call ancient Greek culture. What the figure of Homer, whether he's imaginary or not, what he does remind us of is something EastLine is about to really underscore. The Iliad was not originally a book like this one that you might pick up and read. Imagine instead a gathering place in ancient Greece before the invention of theatre, where a single singer stands in front of a crowd and they call out to the muses, the goddesses who inspire the telling of stories, and then recounts a tale from another time and place. This solitary storyteller is called a rhapsodist, which in Greek translates to something like song stitcher. So what's the song being stitched by EastLine? Well, you probably know it. There have been lots of films and TV shows inspired by the Iliad. Most famously from 2004, I think, the Brad Pitt flick Troy. And it is indeed about the Trojan War. But unlike Pitt's movie, it zones in on just a few weeks in the final year of a decade-long conflict. The original audiences for the Iliad would be able to place this story in context, but just in case you're not an ancient Greek, here's the backstory in brief for you to bring you up to date. So, on either side of the Aegean, we have the Greeks, or to use the Homeric term, Achaeans, and then on the other side, the Trojans. Troy is in modern-day Turkey, and is a major power in this ancient world of warrior kings. Over in what we now call Greece, there are dozens of independent city-states ruled over by militaristic, interconnected dynasties. These include Mycenae, Sparta, Athens, Corinth, Ithaca, and so on. Generally, these cities just war with each other, and not Troy, though Troy has been involved in a few conflicts. But all this changes with Helen. Helen was the queen of Sparta, the wife of Menelaus, who was the king of Sparta. She falls in love with Paris, a Trojan prince, and runs off with him to Troy. Menelaus invokes an oath taken by many of the Achaean leaders to protect Helen's husband against those who would seek to steal her away, because Helen is supposedly the most beautiful woman in the world. And so Menelaus' brother Agamemnon, who is probably the most powerful of the Achaean leaders, he summons all his fellows, he summons all his fellows' armies, and they sail collectively to make war on Troy. And this is an absolutely unprecedented turn of events, that all the Achaean leaders would set aside their differences and make war on another nation. Of course, this isn't all Helen and Paris's fault, because there are more than humans involved in this story. The strange and wonderful cast of Greek gods are in the picture. Helen was, in fact, a prize for Paris, promised to him by the goddess of sex and beauty herself, Aphrodite. Paris had pronounced Aphrodite the winner in a beauty contest with two other goddesses, the wise war goddess Athena and the powerful queen of the gods Hera. And just as Agamemnon and the other Achaeans go to war with Troy, so do Athena, Hera, and several of their fellows turn against Troy. Aphrodite, meanwhile, supports the Trojans along with another range of gods. And above them all sits Zeus, the ruler of the gods, who acts as an independent judge in the conflict. Now, if the Trojan War, fought by both humans and by gods, is the big picture against which the Iliad unfolds, then the heart of the poem is the story of Achilles, the greatest of the Achaean heroes, and he's the one played by Brad Pitt in Troy. The first line of the poem asks the muse to sing of the rage of Achilles. This famous anger at being insulted by Agamemnon triggers a series of events that will lead to much personal frustration, much suffering, and also loss, not only for Achilles, but for almost the entire mortal cast of the story. And as is the nature of this poem, as the main story plays out, we are treated to all sorts of mythological tales that are embedded into the narrative. Now, the poem's first episode, and the sequence you will hear tomorrow, begins with the god Apollo sending a plague to the Achaean camp as a form of punishment. So, EastLine's readings are incredibly timely. Some have taken the view that the close involvement of the gods in this poem dilutes the humanity of the story. But we can also look at it another way. The gods' presence elevates the human struggles that are depicted in such acute detail, whether in the home or on the battlefield, setting these difficulties in a cosmic context that gives weight to this war. Because it is more than simply two sides clashing. It is an epoch-ending conflict in which a way of life is coming to a head. Sure, there are some myths that come after the Trojan War. Homer's, or the other poem attributed to Homer, the Odyssey, famously recounts the Achaean hero Odysseus' return to Ithaca, his home, and it also references another homecoming, the story of Agamemnon, who returns to, shall we say, his expectant wife Clytemnestra, and this homecoming was particularly favoured by the Greek tragedians who were writing a couple of hundred years later. And indeed, you might be seeing more of that story from EastLine later this year. But the Iliad, the Trojan War, it's the climax of Greek myth. Now, as the world experiences events that will inevitably bring about major changes in the way we all live, you can, like those ancient Greeks more than 2,000 years ago, listen to another epoch-ending story, one of the most intense tales of war, pride, what it means to be human that's ever been composed. I'm excited to hear EastLine's brilliant community of performers deliver this tale with their distinctive panache, and I hope you are too. So enjoy, and I hope you have fun.